Thank you all. Please be seated and welcome to the White House. It's a great pleasure for us to have you here for this important consumer protection event. I want especially to recognize Secretary Rubin, SEC Chairman Arthur Levitt, FTC Chairman Robert Pitofsky, and Commissioner Moselle Thompson, and Assistant Attorney General Jim Robinson. I'm also looking forward to hearing from our special guest, Mari Frank, who will tell us her story today about why we need more consumer protections. I'd also like to acknowledge the leadership of two members of Congress, Senator Sarbanes and Representative LaFaltz. And I'd like to thank the members of Congress who are here with us today. I'd like particularly to thank Senator Bryan for his leadership, and note that there are many members of Congress from both houses who are here, including Congressman Markey and Inslee, Benson, Waters, Barbara Lee, Roybal Allard, and Konjorsky, and I bet I've missed somebody. And Maxine Waters, right, and Gonzalez. Yes, as we were walking out the door, they were crossing people out they didn't think who could come or who were here, because we know that there are many members of Congress who are at a rally as we speak, who were unable to come but who wanted to come. And among those, in particular, we want to thank the leaders on this issue and many others, including Senator Schumer. Today, thanks to the strong leadership of many of the people in this room, and I think what we should do, because I don't want to miss any of the members of Congress, is to ask all the members of Congress to stand, and so we can acknowledge your presence for being here. You know, we are blessed with a time of great prosperity and growth. More families are able to afford to send their children to college, to own a home, realizing that dream, start their own businesses, expand existing ones, add to or begin personal retirement accounts, and market investments, as we know, are at an all-time high. But of course, we also realize that there are many challenges that are confronting the working families of our country. And these new opportunities and choices that people have brought with them some difficulties, because we don't know whether many people are as fully aware of the protections they currently have, and they often find it difficult to navigate complex financial services and make sound financial choices because they don't always have the protections that they need. Think for just a minute about the fact, for example, that 4 billion unsolicited credit cards are offered to Americans every year. Now, this is a great opportunity for some, but it presents new challenges to others. Now, as you know, our mail here at the White House is screened, and if we're getting unsolicited credit cards, somebody else is taking them out. But we know that that is not the case for everybody else in America, and there are lots of credit cards coming into the post office boxes or through the mail slot into the homes of everyone from college students to people with very limited incomes and without at all any sophisticated understanding of credit. So not surprisingly, an increasing number of people, including college students and young households, are defaulting on their credit card debts at a stage in their lives when developing a bad credit record can have long-term serious consequences. Senior citizens are also vulnerable. Attractive-sounding credit card offers or appealingly low interest rates too often lead them into financial trouble. According to the AARP, seniors are particularly likely to agree to home equity loans or loan consolidations that include substantial fees or unfavorable interest rates. And I've heard some heartbreaking stories about people who were very glad are able to live on their own with various levels of handicaps, both physical and mental, who agree over the telephone to all kinds of credit card expenditures without really understanding the full implications. We've all heard stories about how much confusion can exist when there are low teaser rates, which turn out to be just that. Many consumers don't understand that when they pay only the minimum balance on their bills, it may take years to pay them off and dramatically increase the cost of their original purchase. Consumer debt levels have been rising sharply in recent years, and an increasing number of households are borrowing more heavily against their homes, sometimes incurring debt levels in excess of their home's value. Without effective planning tools to help them achieve financial security, too many Americans believe and find that bankruptcy is their best option. Bankruptcy reform is in order. Debtors who have the genuine capacity to repay their debts should be required to do so. But responsible reform should make sure that people who take on debt know what they're doing and are protected from abusive creditor practices. To use their credit opportunities effectively and to avoid overwhelming debt in the first place, consumers need the tools for interpreting financial information and understanding their financial rights. We know that those who have financial planning programs in their workplace, for example, save more than twice as much as those who do not. And Americans who have had financial training in high school accumulate more over the long haul, a full year's worth of earnings, than those who do not have that education. So today we are taking some important steps to give American consumers more of the benefits and the protections that they need. Building on the work of many congressional leaders, including those in this room, the President will unveil an important set of initiatives that will provide consumers the protection and the information they need to survive and thrive in today's complex economy. These initiatives will go a long way to protect citizens' privacy, educate us all about financial opportunities, and stem fraud and abuse. We all have a stake in these initiatives succeeding because we all have a stake in families understanding their financial opportunities and their financial obligations. When families have the tools to manage their own finances successfully, they are in a better position to support their children, expand their business, and save for college tuition or their own retirement. We are particularly fortunate to have a Treasury Secretary who understands the critical need to support the financial sector in its efforts to expand access to credit and to keep our economy thriving, but who also understands that we must protect and educate consumers in this fast-paced financial world. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce Secretary Bob Rubin.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here today and to have an opportunity to discuss the opportunities and the challenges that are presented by the extraordinarily rapid changes that are taking place with respect to our financial securities industry. I don't think there's any question that the advances in technology and increased competition of recent years have produced nothing short of a revolution in financial services. These innovations have helped to make our financial services industry the world's most competitive. For many citizens, these changes have brought significant benefits. Consumers have greater access to credit, can comparison shop for mortgage rates, and can invest online for a range of financial products. But with these new opportunities have come new risks. New products and new sales methods have confronted consumers with a vast and complex array of choices that they must make. And I think it is absolutely essential that consumers have readily understandable information about the choices they must make and the risks that those choices involve. The new financial marketplace and the technology behind it also creates new avenues for invasion of privacy, an area the Vice President is focused on and will continue to address. In addition, the new products, while having many benefits, have created new ways to defraud consumers, a growing threat that the Secret Service is taking steps to reduce. All of these challenges underscore the need to update our consumer protection laws and adapt them to a changing marketplace. One other item bears special mention. There are still, as the First Lady said, far too many Americans, especially in distressed areas such as inner cities, who do not have access to convenient or accessible financial services. This is an issue that is important to all of us, no matter where we live or what our incomes may be, because bringing more Americans to the mainstream economy will benefit our economy and our society for all of us. It is now my pleasure to introduce a woman who has firsthand experience with the risks of our financial system. Mari Frank from Laguna Niguel, California, will describe how credit card fraud has impacted her life. Ms. Frank.
I'm really honored to be here and actually very excited. Thank you so much, Mr. President and members of Congress, for putting to the forefront the issues of consumer privacy. I'm going to tell you a little story about what happened to me and why it's become such an important issue in my life. About 2 years ago, I was about to take my kids to the beach in beautiful California, and I got a phone call. And the phone call was, "Is this Mari Frank?" "Yes." "Well, this is a bank," which I won't say, but it was a bank I had never heard of, and they wanted to know why I had not paid my $11,000 bill to them. And I said, "Sorry, you have the wrong number." And then they proceeded to tell me my social security number and my birth date. And of course, my heart started beating like it is right now. And I knew I was in trouble, and I found out that there was over $50,000 worth of loss, that this person had gotten a red convertible Mustang in my name, that she had stolen my business cards and was parading as an attorney in California, that she had credit cards, credit lines, and all sorts of fun stuff that was causing my life a havoc. And even though I know how to research and write letters and all that, it took me 9 months, over 500 hours to clean up my credit. And it was a nightmare. And so I'm very, very pleased, first of all, to thank President Clinton and Congress for the Identity Theft Assumption and Deterrence Act that was passed last October and signed by the President in October, because that's at least helpful. But the real issue is that there's some other things going on as well. And that is some of the problems that we're having in the financial industry, and privacy is really the issue. Justice Brandeis had said that privacy was the right to be left alone in the late 1800s. But now we have to define privacy as the right to have control over our information. And if I asked you in here how many of you get those pre-approved offers in the mail, raise your hand. How many? Anybody in here? Yeah. And if I asked you questions about, do you know who's got your personal information and your medical information and what's being said about you, most of us have to say no. Now, that doesn't mean that the private industry is bad. It just means we need to look at things a little bit differently. So, as we enter the millennium, privacy will continue to be a problem for us. Whether we're going grocery shopping with our little cards, or we're talking on the phone and things can be scanned, or whether there's surveillance when I go on the tollway and my little beeper goes off on my transponder, all those things are privacy. We have wonderful technology. Computers are great. I love them. I use the internet all the time. I have my own internet site. But the problem is it's pretty scary because there's some frightening things that can happen, the abuses and the fraud that can happen. So what needs to be done? I am absolutely thrilled to hear the things that the President is going to do, and I'm also very excited about all the privacy legislation that's been introduced in Congress. I read up in my little thomases.gov and read all the wonderful things you're doing and saying this is fabulous because you're bringing it to the forefront. You're recognizing that we have to have an emphasis on privacy. So thank you all so much. It is just, I'm so excited. Anyway, what needs to be done? I think when you hear what the President has to say, you're going to be as excited as I am about some of the things that needs to be done. But from a former victim, and someone who hears problems and stories and cry with people who are victims every day and get hundreds of emails a month from victims, I want to tell you what we need, okay? And it really falls in line with what the President is going to present, so that's why I'm so happy to be here. First of all, we need to provide clear, easy to understand information so consumers know their rights, know their liabilities, and so they won't file bankruptcy. I mean, I'm an attorney, and I can't even understand these things. And so we need to do that. And by the way, for legislation, you could make the laws a little easier to understand as well. I don't think we need to use the legalese. You know, I've gone from being a litigator to a mediator, and I write everything in real simple terms. And that's what people need. We need simple terms. Just, you know, that KISS, K-I-S-S, keep it simple. All right. Give consumers control over how their personal information is collected, sold, or shared with other people, all right? Give notice to us as consumers. What are your rules? Let us know what it is. Have privacy policies so we know. And give us the right to opt out of having our names sold or shared or corrupted. safeguard that private information. For me, I can just tell you what happened. How did this woman get my credit card? Well, what she did was she got one of the promotional offers in the mail. It was not a pre-approved credit. It was just promotional to a woman, Tracy Lloyd. I can say it. She was convicted. She put one line through her name, put my social security number, she made $300,000 a year. I wish. And she was, by the way, because she was assuming a lot of identities. And she sent that in. And that immediately, a credit card with a credit line of $10,000 was issued to her at her address, 4 hours away from my home. That question should be, why did the credit card company not even question why there's a name crossed out? Why didn't they check addresses? Okay? Then, when that new address was reported to the credit reporting agencies, can anyone have an idea what happened then? The credit reporting agencies then made that fraud address the new address. And because my credit was pristine, she got credit pre-approved offers, like candy to her door. Yes, I'll take this $10,000. Yes, I'll take this $10,000. So that's how it grew. Now, I don't think there was any malice by the financial industry, but the handling practices of my private information is what caused the proliferation of the fraud. Okay, so we need to safeguard private information and make sure that no one gives it to someone who doesn't have a right to it, and that it's not corrupted, and they need to identify, is that really me? And finally, enforce the rules. I know David Medina's here, and I want to say I am so thrilled with what the Federal Trade Commission has been doing. You recently had a lawsuit against a company, an information brokerage company that was calling up banks and pretending to be the account holder and then finding out information about that account holder so that there could be lawsuits or whatever. And that was a deceptive practice. And so the Federal Trade Commission has taken a proactive role in protecting us as consumers. Thank you, David. You're wonderful. Okay, and last and most important for me is I think that for those of you in the financial industry, you're probably afraid to raise your hand, but I know you're here. I just want to say that I really applaud you. And I mean, I have lots of credit, and I'm glad my credit is pristine again. I think protecting consumer privacy is not at cross purposes with private industry. We have to start thinking about how protecting consumer privacy is good business. It's very good business. You know why? Because it's profitable. And why? Because consumer trust makes good business. And it also ensures an enduring relationship. So I suggest to you that if you can make the consumers trust you, they'll do more business with you, and you will do more business, and there won't be lawsuits, and there won't be all these horrible things going on. So I suggest to Congress and everyone here is that I encourage you to collaborate together. Put together industry, and don't have private industry and consumers fight about things. Get together and look about how can we make privacy work, all right? And I'm not going to say much more, and I just want to thank you all for being so nice and having me here. This is very exciting for me. My kids wish that they could be here, and my son wanted me to say that I owe it all to him, who is a sophomore at Duke University, and now I have the great honor and great privilege, and I'm probably going to faint from this, to introduce the President of the United States.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mari. I just wish we could have found someone with a little energy to make this presentation. Hillary and I are really delighted to have all of you here, and delighted to be a part of this announcement today because it's so important. And I would like to say a special word of appreciation to Secretary Rubin. That, you know, most people think of the Treasury Secretary as someone who's out there, trying to keep the economy going, and he's done a reasonable job of that, I think. And they think of Bob Rubin as this sort of big Wall Street type brilliant person. But one of the reasons that I wanted him to come and work here is that he actually understands how big economic decisions affect individual people at all levels of income and all different circumstances in life. And I think it's a good thing for a country to have a Treasury Secretary that understands the big issues and then cares about how they impact individual citizens. And I'm very grateful for that. I want to thank Senator Bryan and Congressman Benson, Gonzalez, Inslee, Kanjorski, Markey, Lee, Roybal, Allard, and Waters for being here. And Senator Sarbanes, who can't be here, and Congressman LaFaltz, who's done so much on this, who is here today. And I thank Chairman Levitt, Chairman Potowski, Commissioner Thompson, Assistant Attorney General Jim Robinson. Before I get into the substance of our proposals today, I would like to say just a few words about the terrible tornado devastation in Oklahoma and Kansas, which I'm sure all of you have seen the reports of and perhaps even the gripping pictures of. Some of the most powerful tornadoes ever recorded swept through these states last night. At least 45 people are dead, and the wreckage is still being examined. Whole communities have been leveled. Homes and possessions have been turned into splinters and rubble. I have already spoken with the governor of Oklahoma, Frank Keating, and to tell him that I have declared Oklahoma a federal disaster area. And we have just completed a similar declaration for the state of Kansas, and I look forward to talking to Governor Graves later today. I had a good talk with James Lee Witt, our FEMA director, who is now in Oklahoma, with Buddy Young as regional director, and they are working on what we can do to provide all the necessary support for people. We have to make sure everyone's accounted for and that the beginning cleanup can start. Local and state officials, fire and police, emergency services, National Guard personnel have already worked through the night and are doing a terrific job of dealing with an incredibly difficult situation. We're here talking about how people feel when something has been stolen from them. A lot of our fellow Americans have had everything taken from them in those two states, and I know that they will be in your prayers. The people of Oklahoma City in particular have suffered too much devastation in recent years, and they've been hit very, very hard by this. So we'll have more to say about that in the days ahead. I would like to just put this issue briefly in the historical perspective to emphasize the importance that I feel the entire Congress, without regard to party, should attach to this matter. We've been at this experiment in government for 223 years now. We started with a Constitution that was rooted in certain basic values and written by some incredibly brilliant people who understood that times would change and that definitions of fundamental things like liberty and privacy would change, and that circumstances would require people to rise to the challenges of each new era by applying the old values in practical ways. This happened at the dawn of the 20th century. Maury mentioned Justice Brandeis. He said, when we changed from being an agricultural to an industrial society, that laws built upon under simpler conditions of living could not handle the complex relations of the modern industrial world. He and the leaders of the progressive movement about 100 years ago therefore fought to adapt our institutions to new markets, to update vital protections for our citizens, to uphold the right to privacy, which Brandeis said was the right most valued by civilized men. Now, that's what's happening today. We're in the midst of another vast economic transformation. Once again, the laws that govern dynamic markets so dynamic they could not have been imagined 200 years ago, are out of date. I just read, just parenthetically, I read yesterday a quote that said that 60 years ago, the prices in London for most basic commodities were the same that they were in 1660 before the outbreak of the Great London Fire. In the last 60 years, most of us have seen the prices go up 1,000-fold. Thank goodness it hadn't happened in the last 6 years. We're maybe in a different thing. But the pace of change is very different. Not just the nature of change, but the very pace of it. So once again, we have to respond, applying our oldest values in practical ways that allow them to be preserved and enhanced in modern times. We all know that technology and competition have revolutionized the financial services industry. I think most of us believe that by and large these changes have been very good. But many people, as you've heard, don't have the knowledge to properly evaluate what is truly a dizzying array of options. Some are falling victim to new abusive practices. Others are being left out of the financial marketplace altogether. That is why today I'm proud to announce our new Financial Privacy and Consumer Protection Initiative to give all Americans both the tools and the confidence they need to fully participate in a thriving but highly complex 21st century economy. This initiative is based on 5 key principles, and it draws on several important proposals developed by the members of Congress who are here today and some who are not, whom Hillary mentioned. The first, clearly, is that we have to do more to protect every American's financial privacy. The Vice President led our efforts to identify areas where privacy is at risk, and financial areas came up over and over and over again as a matter of great concern. The technological revolution now makes it easier than ever for people to mine your private financial data for their profit. While some of your private financial information is protected under existing federal law, your bank or broker or insurance company could still share with affiliated firms information on what you buy with checks and credit cards, or sell this information to the highest bidder. This law, to put it mildly, is outdated and should be changed. To give you the right to control your financial information, to let you decide whether you want to share private information with anyone else. I look forward to working with members in the House and the Senate on this issue. To enhance financial privacy, we must also protect the sanctity of medical records. With the growing number of mergers between insurance companies and banks, lenders potentially can gain access to the private medical information contained in insurance forms. So we propose to severely restrict the sharing of medical information within financial services conglomerates. You should not have to worry that the results of your latest physical exam will be used to deny you a home mortgage or a credit card. There are many other important protections for medical records that ought to be put in place. Because Congress has given me the authority to act, if it does not do so by August, one way or another, we will protect the privacy of medical records this year. Second, we must require greater public disclosure and enhance every consumer's right to know. As the First Lady just pointed out, although every time I hear it I shake my head, consumers received nearly 4 billion credit card solicitations last year. Some offers contain new traps for the unwary. For example, sometimes credit card companies advertise low interest rates known as teaser rates to reel in consumers who then are surprised with unexpected interest rate hikes. We believe any marketing of teaser rates for credit cards should include equally prominent notice of their expiration date, their eventual annual percentage rate, and any penalties that apply. Millions of consumers have also found out the hard way that making only minimum payments rarely helps retire a debt and almost always results in very large interest payments. So we will require clear notice of how long and how costly repayment would be if the consumer makes only the minimum payment. Third, we have to do more to combat consumer fraud. As Mari Frank discovered the hard way, it is remarkably easy now for a thief to take out huge loans in someone else's name, run up enormous credit card debts, and tap into bank accounts. Last October, Congress passed, and I was pleased to sign, the Identity Theft and Assumption Deterrence Act. It's a good law, but we need to give it sharp teeth. So today I'm instructing the Treasury and Justice Departments to give higher priority to cases involving identity theft, particularly those involving organized crime groups with the goal of increasing the number of prosecutions both at the state and federal levels. And Treasury will convene a national summit on identity theft and work with the private sector to make it harder to steal someone else's identity in the first place. We'll also crack down on fraud committed over the internet. If we want to seize the internet's full potential, we have to stay ahead of those who would use this open medium to manipulate stock prices, commit fraud in online auctions, or perpetuate any other type of financial scam. That's why I've asked the Justice Department to step up prosecutions, to develop a national center for tracking internet fraud, and to train state, local, and federal law enforcement officers on how to recognize and root out these schemes. I find that law enforcement, compared to people who are doing criminal activity in this area, are rather like parents trying to keep up with their children on the computer. It is an endless effort, and we need to organize and systematize a continuous training and retraining effort so that we can stay ahead of the curve. Chairman Leavitt is launching an expanded effort to arm investors with the information they need to protect themselves against online securities fraud. Listen to this. Complaints of internet fraud have tripled in the past 6 months, just in the last 6 months. Therefore, I will work with Congress and Chairman Leavitt to provide the additional resources for the SEC necessary for enforcement beyond what I have already requested in our balanced budget. Fourth, we must provide financial services for those who have been denied access to credit and basic banking services for too long. Today, I'm proud to announce that the Treasury Department will soon make available through private banks low-fee bank accounts for those who receive federal benefits like Social Security. Unfortunately, there are some in Congress who would have us effectively limit rather than expand access to financial services in underserved communities. As the Senate debates this issue this week, I want to reiterate what I said in my veto letter to Congress. We will oppose any effort to weaken or undermine the continued relevance of the Community Reinvestment Act. While that act has been on the law for well over 20 years now, over 90% of the lending under it has occurred in the last 6 years in our administration. I'm very proud of that. It has not done anything to hurt bank profits, and we ought to stay with it. I know that leaders of the civil rights community spoke today on this subject, and I just want to applaud them and to encourage them to stay at it. Finally, as has already been said, we have to increase the financial literacy of the American people. It's not enough to know how to balance a checkbook anymore. Even those fortunate enough to have the help of accountants sometimes have a hard time understanding all the ins and outs of investing in an IRA, paying off credit card debt, or refinancing a mortgage. So today I'm directing my National Economic Council, Gene Sperling is here today with us, to work with our agencies to develop a plan to help all Americans improve their financial literacy. I think Hillary said it adds a year of income to people if they have this kind of training in high school. School is, of course, the best place to start learning about personal finance. The Department of Education will help all our schools find effective lessons plans and other tools to integrate financial literacy into their basic curriculum. So that's what we're trying to do: protect privacy, enhance disclosure, combat fraud, increase access, expand education. These principles are the same ones we use to harness the power and benefits of the Industrial Revolution. They are just as vital today, if not more so, than they were a century ago. It's time now to use them to seize the enormous potential of the information revolution for every American citizen. If we work together, we can help all our families have the benefits of new choices and new technologies. We can help our people thrive in the 21st century. And all we have to do is to remember how we got here over the last 200 plus years. Thank you very much.